This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. Protest in Denim Town over shooting of resident. Residents in Denim Town, Kingston, are at this moment protesting the shooting death of a 32-year-old man. The police have identified the man as Hurricane Glenn. The incident took place shortly before 7 o'clock yesterday evening, residents told the news. Glenn was reportedly among 3 others who were accosted by the Jamaica Defense Force soldiers who were on foot patrol on Charles Street. A confrontation developed, and it was alleged that Glenn held on to the soldier's weapon in an attempt to relieve the soldier of the gun. Glenn was shot in the process. However, residents have rejected this claim. They say Glenn was attempting to intervene after he saw JDF soldiers beating his younger cousin and a friend. During his intervention, a scuffle developed and the residents carried Glenn away from the scene. One resident who declined to speak on camera said that Glenn was then chased by soldiers who shot him multiple times in his home. Senior Superintendent for the West Kingston Division, Michael Phipps, has asked residents to remain calm. "I am asking residents to cooperate with the security forces in the area and not to assault members of the joint forces, as we have had reports of members being assaulted by citizens." He added, "In the meantime, we urge them not to block the roadways, and anyone who has witnessed the fatal shooting should contact Indicom, who is leading on the investigations." Residents have vowed to continue their protest this week. Man in custody following gun seizure by Irish Town cops. A man is in custody following the seizure of a gun by the Irish Town police in St. Andrew. The weapon was confiscated yesterday. In a post to Twitter, the police revealed that the weapon is a Smith & Wesson pistol. 13 rounds of ammunition were also seized. No further details were provided on the circumstances which led to the seizure and the subsequent arrest of the man. St. Anne Municipal Corporation calls emergency meeting following Saturday's gridlock. The St. Anne Municipal Corporation has called an emergency meeting for 4 this afternoon to discuss yesterday's traffic gridlock in Ocherius and several other parts of St. Anne, which lasted for several hours. The incident spanned Saturday evening into late Saturday night, the news understands. Senior Superintendent Dwight Powell said following yesterday's pandemonium, the police will have to revisit the issuing of party permits and also its strategy for dealing with traffic. There was a flood of complaints on social media last night by persons who had to spend several hours in a traffic jam between Ocherius and St. Anne's Bay as a party at the government-owned property Pearly Beach in the Duns River area hosted Festival of Floats. However, Powell said Festival of Floats was not the only contributing event, as there were other activities in the area. There were many persons visiting the parish yesterday. All the beaches were filled. As you know, St. Anne is a place for holiday makers, so this is the first major holiday weekend since the opening of the country. The influx of people that came in yesterday totally inundated what we had in terms of police, Powell said. He continued, "On good days, we're having challenges already. Yesterday was an extraordinary one for us. Going into the rest of the holiday, we're revisiting our strategies as we're expecting some other major events to see how best we can avert situations like what happened yesterday." Among the events set for St. Anne over the rest of the weekend are Sands set for today, racing at Dover Raceway, Igloo at the Ocherius Bay Beach, and the Ocherius Carnival slated for Turtle River Park on Easter Monday. Andrew Allen, who was caught in traffic along the thoroughfare yesterday, remarked that there was a lot of chaos and confusion as he tried to make his way off the highway at the Miami Bay roundabout on his journey from Kingston to Ocherius. He said after being stuck at the roundabout for approximately an hour, he went back onto the highway and exited at Golden Grove, traveled through Colgate and Front Gully, only to be confronted by another traffic heading towards Milford Road into Ocherius. General indiscipline of motorists was a major contributing factor. It was not just the taxi operators who were at fault. The police just could not cope, he pointed out. He described his experience as being mild compared to some others. A drive from Ocherius to St. Anne's Bay, which usually takes about 25 minutes or less, lasted up to 3.5 hours for some motorists. Several workers at some places of employment waited in vain for their assigned vehicle to pick them up and had to seek alternate transport. Several others opted to walk for long distances from Ocho Rios to Draxhall and even to St. Anne's Bay, the news also understands. JDF soldier committed to stand the trial. The Jamaica Defense Force soldier who was charged for the 2019 fatal shooting of an employee of Azan's Supercenter in St. Andrew has been committed to stand the trial before the Home Circuit Court for murder. JDF Corporal Roland Gray was committed last week at the end of the committal proceedings heard before the St. Andrew Parish Court. He is to face trial for the murder of 47-year-old Courtney Minto. Mr. Minto, a parking attendant at Azan's Supercenter on Old Hope Road, was shot during a dispute with a soldier in the parking lot on December 17, 2019. The Director of Public Prosecutions had ruled last year that charges be laid against the JDF corporal. U.S. State Department working with Jamaican authorities to apprehend the lottery scammers. The U.S. State Department says it is working closely with the Jamaican government to have more persons involved in lottery scamming extradited to the United States to face trial. In its latest report on international narcotics and law enforcement affairs, the State Department said Jamaican lottery scammers are now defrauding U.S. citizens of an estimated U.S. $300 million annually. To counter the lottery scamming threat to Americans, the State Department says it has been providing assistance to the Jamaican government under the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative. This support is to professionalize the Jamaica Constabulary Force, improve Jamaica's counter-narcotics capacity, and strengthen Jamaica's criminal justice sector. The State Department says interagency cooperation between U.S. law enforcement agencies and their Jamaican counterparts has resulted in the extradition of 18 Jamaicans suspected of lottery scamming since 2017. It says the extraditions were part of an initiative called Operation Hard Copy, a U.S. interagency effort to arrest the suspects wanted under a 2013 federal indictment alleging the theft of at least US $5.6 million from 80 elderly U.S. citizens. Do not sell JPS shares during an energy crisis, Paulwell tells government. With the license for the Jamaica Public Service Company up for renewal in 2027 and amid rising oil prices, opposition spokesman on energy Philip Paulwell said now would be a bad time for the government to sell its 20% shares in the company. Paulwell, who made the argument during his recent contribution to the 2022-2023 sectorial debate in the House of Representatives, noted that the point has been raised that the JPS license will come to an end in 5 years' time. The government must use its greater leverage to effect certain changes early in exchange for concessions that the company will need to remain viable with a new license under a more liberalized regime, said Paulwell. He added that these negotiations should start now and be conducted in greater earnest to effect some of the changes immediately. The government has again announced that it will be divesting its 20% shares in the Jamaica Public Service Company. We believe that the timing is bad, as it is quite unlikely that the government would realize maximum earnings at this time of the crisis. Indeed, it is precisely during a crisis that the influence of the government as a shareholder with directors on the board can be used to moderate the natural urges of the business to safeguard itself, sometimes at the exclusive expense of already burdened consumers. Paulwell told the House that the opposition was also concerned about the method for divestment being contemplated. We note that even though the Wigton farm was successfully divested, the stated intention of the government to expand and democratize the stockholdings in the country has not been achieved. Indeed, the anecdotal evidence is that after a few months of the IPO, large investors were able to gobble up the shares that were originally earmarked for small investors, he said. The opposition spokesman, who has been opposing the sale of JPS shares by the government since 2017 for various reasons, said a more creative way has to be found to divest the government assets to allow for deeper and more long-term participation of the wider society. For example, employee share ownership options, he said. In any event, now is not the time for the government to relinquish its influence on the board of the Jamaica Public Service Company, Paulwell added. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.